The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is, please note, the new number is.
Where's my little talkie talk stone? This is Solidite. It's supposed to help you. You know what I'm saying? Like good for that. It's good for that. The energy. Oh, speaking of energy and Solidite, right? So it's interesting because Solidite is good for, like it's for throat chakra. And it's good because it gives you like positive energy for speaking and singing and communication in general. And it's kind of funny because that's the exact topic for this blog. And yeah, so it's kind of funny because I literally was having a little bit of trouble getting what I wanted to say out. And so I'm like, where's my Solidite? And it literally is the topic for this blog. So, hi. Uh, this episode is actually the counterpart to the energy episode, and this is a read through of the blog post. And so, let's just get into it. Building mountains in the desert. Energy, where words begin. Sound is not only important because it registers as radio waves on the electromagnetic spectrum, but sound is an energetic force that carries our words. For our ancestors, sound was a form of energy. That's why they said speech was ntur, a divine power. And they inform us that the ntu ntur were there since the beginning of creation. Energy is sound, is word, is meaning, is memory. So in Tahuti's writings, when he says that word was there in the beginning, he is not only inspiring the first line in the book of Genesis, he is inferring that in the beginning of our time, the Neolithic period, words were used by our creators, the forefathers and foremothers, our ancestors, to describe and to express what they experienced. Based on modern science and the ancestors' declaration that word was there in the beginning, we can rely on words to be like ancient record keepers. When things may have disappeared from view, relics and monuments destroyed and isolated from touch, words have held the truth of Africa since the beginning of the dawn, because all along, language was keeping record. So linguistics may be the most identifying science that will give us the truth and fill in the blanks, connecting us back to our history in a way that allows us to follow the footsteps of those who walked before us. Because all along, language was keeping record. Here's a list of the tools of linguistics, the main tools of linguistics. I've got the terms on one side and how I would describe it in my own words. So, phonetics is how a word sounds when we speak it, its energy, its shape in the mouth, and how it vibrates when we say it. Semantics is what a word literally means, the core definition. Pragmatics is what a word feels like in context, the emotion, whether there's double meaning and the poetry of it. Morphology is how words are built, like roots and prefixes, and how words change in time. Let's look at two ancient deities, one from southern Africa and the other from Kemet. Goab, also called Gob and Geb. Linguistically, the shift from Goab to Geb shows a phonetic evolution that retains the same root. Phonetics, Gob softens into Gob, which easily becomes Geb. Gob, Geb, Geb, 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 Gob, Geb, Geb. Sorry, it's kind of funny. Semantics. Both are deities connected to the earth, to nourishment, and to the sustenance of life. Pragmatics. They point to a shared spiritual understanding that the earth itself was divine. Morphology. Dropping the oa sound into a simple or mirrors common shifts in oral traditions where pronunciation adapts but meaning stays rooted. This points to ancestral continuity between the Khoikhoi, who honored Goab, and the Cometians, who honored Geb. If you're curious, there's another word that traveled far into the future, one you still use today. Want a hint? Want a hint? Look to the bottom of the page for the connection between Heru and Heru. Hero. Language was first created by our ancestors who lived in southern Africa before they migrated up and out. And while language confirms the science, it is language that gives us nuance, lots of nuance. We can rely on our senses to decipher truths because in ancient times, our ancestors didn't separate the power of speech by saying that it's not energy because it's spoken from someone's mouth. Our ancestors knew that at a certain rate and at a certain frequency, wind could generate electricity, and our breath that we have in our body was a tiny portion of that great power. It's kind of funny because everything the ancestors said was Ntu became a scientific discipline. Renewable energy names the wind, the earth, water, fire as energy sources. But the one that gets often overlooked and socially classified is the Mtu, Ntr, divine speech. Back then, the ancestors defined speech as a divine power. Language was never meant to be used or seen as a passive action. It was a tool to invoke love, assistance, guidance, a tool to reject, repel, and warn. When Tahuti says that word and mind cannot be separated, this is more than a philosophical thought. It's really reflecting a modern scientific study explaining that when the complex mind developed, so did speech. People began to create words when the brain evolved around 75,000 years ago. And anthropology research in South Africa shows that our ancestors' neocortex grew larger, making them capable of forming complex language, which marked a turning point in human evolution. This is not a surprise, since in that region of the world, there was only a continuation of life. And with that, language naturally became the first system to preserve thought, culture, and memory. Our senses are how we perceive energy. We see light, which is light. We feel warmth, which is UV rays. The things we taste, touch, and smell convert chemically to a frequency that registers on the electromagnetic spectrum. Our ancestors were extremely focused on understanding how energy moves in us, around us, and throughout the universe. But while they did this, they left us a trail of footsteps to follow, where other sensible observations may have been lost. Sound preserved in language, a map to the past. And here is the hint reveal. So each one describes each linguistic tool in order. So, thank you so much for joining me this time and being a part of this read along. Um, oh, make sure you like and subscribe and turn on your notifications, and also share this with other people who you believe would love to find out about the okay, share this with a few people. Share this with like as many people as you can. Share this with as many people as you can. um, Share this with people who you think want to know more about African history